But yeah, that's the whole reason was there's no repository or anyone highlighting kind of what, you know what I mean, what experts do on in comms. And everyone talks about it, acts like they know, but they don't. And so we'll get going. All right. Welcome to the show, Brittany Eck. Really excited to have you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here. You're one of the unsung heroes, one of these government bureaucrats, which I want to talk about that word and that. But I'm really excited to have you on the show. A lot of folks don't understand, like, when hurricanes happen or natural disasters happen, you got to get the message out. And there's no redos on that. And so you are on the front lines of doing that. But just like everybody else, I want to give an intro, and everybody gets an intro on their bio. Let me talk about you a little bit and your background, if that's all right.
No, sure.
Brittany Eck is a communications policy and media relations strategist who has served in nearly all levels of government. Her distinguished 25-year career includes proven ability to evaluate legislation and engage with various audiences, including elected officials, state agencies, and policy stakeholders. She has an extensive background in policy analysis, strategic planning, rapid response messaging, and team performance improvement. Brittany's success is derived from her ability to effectively communicate complex policy concepts, promote effective message discipline, that's a big one, effective message discipline, bridge the gap between executive leadership and program staff, and effectuate media and outreach strategies that deliver results. At the Texas General Land Office, Brittany's public outreach efforts include production of an Emmy Award winning disaster preparedness campaign and statewide engagement on recovery and mitigation programs benefiting millions of Texans. Brittany Eck, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, do you remember doing all of that? That is quite the list.
The difference post-COVID is whether it was 3 days ago or 3 years ago, and remembering which one it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because it is kind of a vortex in everybody's memory is pre-COVID, post-COVID, and especially since you were basically essential staff and were not allowed to take a break during that time. Well, Eck, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it, because I think what I really want to hear about is kind of how basically when hurricanes hit, you're on the scene, right? I mean, like, that's kind of how we work on this, but would like to kind of start from the beginning. And
Sure.
And how did you get into this crazy industry? Kind of like,
Oh, goodness.
What's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?
Well, that's actually kind of funny. I wanted to be an FBI profiler.
Really?
And I was not good at psychology. The classes are hard. And the government relations classes were the public policy, those classes were so easy, and I had the best grades there. So my mother said, "Congratulations, that is your major."
Oh.
And so I, at that point, kind of thought that I might go to law school or
Yeah.
go into policy. I really enjoyed my time in different elected officials' offices working on the policy side.
Okay.
But where I truly excelled, and I think part of that is due to my, ADHD and I'm not diagnosed OCD, but a little bit of both of those. The comms world is really great for that high energy crisis reaction. Those folks that are really into that adrenaline rush, that's where the comms comes in. The policy folks tend to be in their offices reading their pages and pages and books and having those in-depth policy discussions. But I like to say that policy is a mile deep and an inch wide, whereas comms is an inch deep and a mile wide. You have to be able to cover a lot more topics. And you might not know as much as those policy experts, but you really do have to get to know those subject areas very well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you have fuel, I see, for
Yes.
the conversation. What was the order today?
It is a peppermint tea with no sugar and no cream, because that's better for the vocal cord.
A true expert. Cheers.
Yes, cheers.
Thanks for being here. Okay, was there anything in your childhood that you look back now going, I was already doing comms as a kid, or that was kind of a spark for this?
Sure. I, as a kid, really honestly grew up in a neighborhood with very few children.
Oh, okay.
And I was very outgoing at times, but I would go and speak to all my neighbors. I actually had a neighbor that rebuilt old Ford Model Ts.
Yeah.
And he became one of my really good friends. And so I developed a curiosity about random weird things.
Okay.
And I think that feeds into communications. I was also a cheerleader and in theater, which helped with that projection and the confidence to just get up in front of 100 people and give a speech.
That's great.
I don't know, just growing up, I really honestly thought that I could do almost anything. My folks were very supportive. I had
amazing.
very supportive family and community, and I was never told that, that would be a hard thing to do. Oh, you should reconsider that.
Yeah.
So I really thought, well, what do I want to go into?
Right.
And I was really fascinated. I loved Law and Order, and I loved investigative things. So I thought that might be the world that I go into. And really that relates to communications and storytelling, because at my current agency, we have to do a lot of investigative work to find those stories. We have a lot of really amazing public servants that work there, but they're not very verbal.
Yeah.
And they're not going to tell you, come out and say, hey, I really think this is a good thing we're doing. You should feature that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of talking to folks, a lot of, as a child, I would go and speak to random neighbors that were much older than me.
Yeah.
Because it was the only people that were around.
Yeah.
And so that translates later in life to going and talking to folks in other departments of the agency that others may not interact with. I know people in every different part of the agency and can go to their bosses and their colleagues and say, what are folks working on that really need to be highlighted here in this agency, and find some of those gems of stories that need to be told.
And so did you go straight into public service outside of school? So you go to university, you go to the University of Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. That's right. We're in a little bit of maroon for you. And so do you go straight to work after college and into comms?
Well, no. Actually, when I worked at the local party there in Brazos Valley, I got to know some of the folks that worked for Phil Graham. He was a professor at Texas A&M University, always came back. If there was a home game that he was going to be able to make, he would come and might do an event nearby as well as part of his official duties. So his local person was actually out of East Texas, and it was a 4-hour drive for him. So I started doing a lot of his advanced work for him before I even graduated. So when I graduated, I actually called him up and said, hey, I'm looking for a job. And he said, oh, great, we have one for you. My options were D.C. or Houston. Oh. And at the time, I was a little hesitant to go up to D.C.
Yeah.
So I started out in Houston, Texas as a regional staff person for United States Senator Phil Graham.
Wow.
Who then, after that, announced his retirement only a few months later.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Right when you got your job?
I wanted to do the campaign and be on the campaign trail and try all that out, and it was not in the cards.
Okay.
But it's still amazing to have that on my resume for the 8 months I had it on the resume.
So what did you do?
Oh, goodness. I actually hopped on a local congressional campaign. We had no chance at winning, but
those are fun.
We did get the DCCC to drop $1 million into it because of some of the investigative work I did and some of the comms that I did. I managed to find out that the person we were running against, most of the people that had endorsed him were not in the district. Oh. I also did some sleuthing and found that some of the individuals that had benefited from some of the votes that person had taken were some of his main donors.
Okay.
And those produced news stories that then got the attention of the DCCC, who began to worry that we were making headway. We were not. We made some. We did get out the vote. And a lot of times with some of these races, it's not about who who does the best job. Sometimes it's who can get out their folks.
Yeah.
And sometimes the message doesn't have to resonate district-wide. It just has to resonate with enough people that you get enough people to the polls. Yeah. And that is why they took an interest in that race. After that, I felt more confident, and I did go up to D.C.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I moved up there with no job. and had to hit the pavement and really.
Oh, so you just took a leap of faith.
I took a leap of
Wow.
faith, and it was
And you bet
it
on
was a
yourself.
crazy one.
And you bet on yourself, right?
I
I mean,
did.
that's the big thing right there, right?
Yes.
You bet on yourself.
It was, it was a challenge, but honestly, it's that being able to go door to door and being like, my name is Brittany Eck and I'm looking for a job. Here's my resume.
Yeah.
I'd, willing to take whatever job you have.
And when you say door to door, you mean on the hill, right?
Oh, on the hill.
Right?
I literally went door to door
Wow.
with paper resumes because sometimes it's that, and it's going to the events and meeting the people, because a lot of times, especially now in today's really competitive environment, it's about who you know that's going to get you that job.
Yeah.
Not your resume.
Yeah. So where did you start then at the hill?
The office of the speaker.
Oh, wow. Home run right off the bat.
I actually interviewed for another job and didn't get it because the individual wanted me to move back to Texas and do campaign work for him.
Okay.
And I said no. I moved all the way up here, and that is not. I don't want to return to Ennis, Texas. Was the location of the district. I said no. It's okay. I'll stay here and try to find something. So after I didn't get that job, I really just started at the A's and worked my way down.
That is amazing.
And I got to H, and I called Speaker Hastert's main office, his Illinois office, and I said, my name's Brittany Eck. I'm looking for a job.
Yeah.
And they said, well, actually, you're on our list of people to call. Can you come in tomorrow for an interview? And I said, let me check my calendar. That'll work. And I actually had a job. After that, I left their office, and I was trying not to feel too confident about it. I went back over to the House side, and I started passing out more resumes and following up with people that I had talked to. And when I turned my phone back on, they said, can you come back here? You have a job.
No kidding.
So I actually started getting paid before I interviewed.
That's amazing.
But it was a great opportunity. It really introduced, they had a very fast-paced office.
Yeah.
Working in a leadership office in Capitol Hill is daily craziness.
Yeah.
Now, the great thing is when they go home for a month in August, you have a lot of time off.
Okay.
And that's probably not for the policy staffers. They're probably still doing meetings.
Yeah.
But for the folks that are greeting the folks that walk in the door, and 90% of their job is when the folks are there.
Yeah.
That's a great time to really catch up on things.
Okay. And so did that springboard you into more communications at that point?
It did. Yeah. Actually, there was a woman that I met through the Texas State Society who found out that my job was scheduling rooms on the House side.
Okay.
She worked for Senator Hutchison at the time, K. Bailey Hutchison, and she needed a room. They had been bounced out of a room for an event, and it was in like 2 days, and they heard that the person that was in charge of rooms on the House side, which was I was the most highly paid highly sought after $27,000 a year employee on the House side because I controlled all the rooms.
Wow.
So I found her a room for her event and saved her event. And she said, I don't know what I can do to say thank you. And I said, well, actually, I'm really thinking. She was a speechwriter. Her name is Jennifer Sarver. She lives here in Austin. And she said, I said, I'm really interested in getting into press. I see you're a speechwriter. Could we have coffee and chat? Yeah. And she's like, great. Why don't you send over your resume? Well, it turns out they had a assistant press secretary position open. You're kidding. Okay. And I started there 2 weeks later.
Really? Okay.
It's very fast-paced in D.C.
Yeah. But also you have to be ready to go.
Yeah, you have to be ready to go.
And you have to have a resume that says, hey, I'm hireable, right?
Well, and that's why when I moved to Austin, so many people were actually hesitant to hire me because they said you've hopped around a lot.
Yeah.
Well, when you're only making $27,000 a year and somebody offers you
$30,000, especially in one of the most expensive cities.
In one of the most expensive cities in America.
Yeah.
And also, they don't anticipate that a staff assistant is going to stay there indefinitely. They know the gig there.
Yeah.
But your job is to try and make those connections and look for that next job.
Yeah. So that was kind of the beginnings with press and assistant press secretary at that point?
Yes, at that point I was sold.
Yeah.
Working for her a few years was about the most fun I've ever had.
Yeah.
She was a very driven woman. She expected perfection.
Okay.
I remember with her, you you didn't make excuses. You just
Yeah.
said, "I'm sorry, Senator. That will never happen again." And she really liked that forthrightness.
Yeah.
And she was a press secretary herself, so she understood the job.
Yeah.
She also understood when you weren't doing it well.
It's a double-edged sword there, right?
It is a double-edged sword. But honestly, one of the most amazing individuals I've ever worked for in my career. And about 2 years into that, I'd been promoted, but I was offered a communications director job over on the House side.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I made that jump.
Yeah.
But then after that, I started graduate school. I went to Johns Hopkins and got a master's in communications with a emphasis in political communications.
Really? Okay. How'd you like that? Did you like that program?
Oh, it was fabulous.
Yeah.
Studying communications in DC at a school like Johns Hopkins was amazing because my teachers were some of the people that worked in politics.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, I can't think to name anyone right now off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But they really were those professionals that already had done it, were doing it.
Yeah.
Some of the connections that I made later were people that called me up to try and interview some of my bosses.
Wow.
So it really was not only working in communications at the time, but also studying it with some of the masters was a fantastic opportunity.
And so what did that do for your career? Like, do you recommend a master's?
I do,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
There are so many people that have a degree nowadays. So being able to say that, and also I recommend, this might be to the chagrin of some universities, but I recommend going to different universities and studying at different programs because that expands your alumni pool.
Yeah.
It also expands your perspective.
Yeah.
I met people at Texas A&M University that have been very helpful to me in my career. They're amazing people. I really recommend the Aggie Network. But having gone to Johns Hopkins, there are individuals that I met there that were very different than the population of people that were studying politics and political science at Texas A&M.
Okay.
So that was a fascinating few years. I did take my time. I paid for it myself as well, so it was going class at a time.
Gotcha.
Which
is a pretty incredible story. If you're doing it yourself in
Sure.
DC, making staffer money and grad school, right? I mean, like.
I remember I had not been paid back by a bureaucrat, and I know we have a question on bureaucrats versus public servants coming up. That by a bureaucrat, I had not been paid for some travel, and I had to go and tell my undersecretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce that I would no longer be able to work for them anymore if they weren't going to pay me the thousands of dollars I was spending on travel. And we got it figured out, and I was able to pay my next semester.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge budgeting it.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to live in DC, period.
Yeah.
But to work and balance that, there is no work-life balance if you would do a grad program in DC while working. I will just say that is not a thing that exists there.
No, it's not a healthy lifestyle. And so after that, what do? You get your master's.
Sure.
You graduate. You walk. Pretty excited, I bet. At that point.
I actually didn't walk.
No, really?
No,
were you still working?
Yes, I had started work here in
no.
Austin.
Oh.
I moved back to Texas while I was writing my thesis. And
Okay.
so I had to go back up there to defend it. And the graduation ceremony was conflicted with my job. And quite frankly, it was on the main campus of Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
And I had always attended the one near DuPont Circle in DC.
Okay.
So I'd never set foot on campus.
Gotcha.
And quite honestly, at that point, I was just, give me
Yeah, ready to go.
give me the degree. As long as it's in my hands, I'm fine. I promise you.
So what brought you back to Texas?
Oh gosh, that was a change from the Bush administration, the W. Bush administration, to the Obama administration. I
Okay.
knew if I took one more job there,
Yeah.
that I was just going to live there permanently.
Yeah.
And it is so complicated to fly home from DC to rural Texas. At that point, my parents were living outside of Tyler.
Okay.
And it's not easy. It's not easy to get to Reagan National. It's not easy
Yeah.
to get through the TSA there. It's a whole day of travel
Yeah.
to be able to get home. And I knew that as my parents were getting older, that I wanted to be closer to them.
Gotcha.
So I moved back, and I luckily found a job in Austin. I've been here ever since.
So did you start working in comms here? Did you stay in public service when you came back?
I did. I landed a job working for a state rep who had won a interim election.
Okay.
And so it was kind of interesting to have a freshman representative
Yeah.
who's so excited to be there and wanted that fast-paced world of session.
Yeah.
But won in March and took office, and then I went to go work for him in May, and nobody was here. It was the interim, and he would want to come down and meet with individuals and start planning policy. And I said, we can do that over the phone. Communications works in a multitude of media.
Yeah.
But that was fun. At that point, I not only did, for a state rep, you do everything.
Yeah.
I was the head administrative person, the manager. I was the therapist for the very young people that were working for me in the office.
Yeah.
I did communications, policy, everything.
Yeah.
So that was really fun because in DC, I had gotten to work on a lot of legislation.
Yeah.
I hadn't gotten the opportunity to really write it.
Gotcha.
And really manipulate and find the different ways that we can make good policy better.
Yeah.
And take it from being good policy to actually getting it passed.
Yeah.
That's a very different thing.
Yeah.
Having good policy, and it's soul crushing, I think, sometimes in the Texas legislature to have a baby bill.
Yeah.
And you work so hard on it, and sometimes this is not a this session bill.
Yes.
Some bills I've grown to learn that some are a 3-session bill.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to lay the groundwork for it.
Yeah.
The first session might be finding out what people don't like about it,
Yeah.
who's going to challenge it, who's going to support it,
Yeah.
and then building that for the second session. And that might get some momentum, might pass, but likely it gets lost in the thousands of bills that are filed during that session. And so, and that speaks to some of the noise nowadays too. Something might not be the issue du jour of that session.
And so every time you test the bill, are you fine tuning your message on how to basically get it out there and tell people
Absolutely.
what it's about? Okay.
And sometimes I remember having some of my now very, very good friends walk into my office, my second session as a chief of staff, and the bill that I had helped write with the LBB, the legislative, the folks that write the legislation for us, that actually put it into statute.
Yeah.
I had fine-tuned it. We knew going into this that this is the bill that we wanted. We had thought through a lot of the parts of it, and a police officer union association walked into my office and told me it was the number 1 bill on their kill list for that session.
Really?
And I stopped dead. I was like, oh, why? Why? But I asked him, I said, what don't you like about it?
Yeah.
And it came to find out that where it was in a statute was actually the problem.
Okay.
Because it entitled the recipients of, it's called the School Marshal Bill.
Mm-hmm.
It allows access to training for a school marshal, somebody who's not a police officer, not a law enforcement officer, to be able to have a weapon on campus.
Okay.
And this was not long after, a few of the shootings that had happened, and we were looking for something that was a good middle ground.
Okay.
Something that might be safer than some of the other options that were being proposed.
Yeah.
We thought we had really thought through this bill,
Yeah.
but it turned out that it gave the school marshals the same burial and other benefits that if you're killed on the job
Okay.
as a full LEO, as a full law enforcement
Wow.
official. So we were able to say, well, wait a second, if we move it from here in the statute to here in the statute, and they looked at it. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that doesn't do, yeah. Oh, yeah, we're in favor of your bill now.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so then they actually testified in favor of it
Wow.
and advocated for it because
Yeah.
they liked our version better than some of the others.
Yeah.
that maybe didn't have some of the fail safes that we had worked so hard on. So doing policy, I love Texas politics because I feel like you can be involved in politics, in the policy part of it.
Yeah.
Whether you're an advocate, a communicator, an actual policy person, or whether you're just somebody who has an interest in this, you can actually become somebody who can help with the communications. Some of my best assets, one of my best assets in disaster recovery is a man by the name of Bob Rehack in Houston who has a blog, and he's been doing this blog since Hurricane Harvey. He's a former engineer. He's a photographer. He is just amazingly intelligent on flood mitigation issues.
Okay.
And he has really helped me understand some of the personalities of some of the folks, or the politics of some of it, or just know that things are happening.
Yeah.
And I've developed a really good relationship with him. And that way he comes to me whenever he's writing a story and he says, does the General Land Office want to weigh in on this issue? And I'll say, yes or no.
Yeah.
But, we have that relationship because of, I think, my policy background.
Yeah. Because you can speak that language and you have it. And it sounds like you have to refine the message, like you're saying, to cut through the noise. And I want to talk more about that. But then at some point, did you leave the Capitol and go to an agency?
I did.
Okay.
I left and went to the Texas General Land Office. Well, actually, I worked for DPS in between two sessions.
Yeah.
I worked in the driver's license division when they had received additional funding and were looking to effectively message some of the improvements that were happening at the driver license division. So that I worked there for a year and a half or so before going back to the legislature.
So you had to explain changes in the driver's licenses to people?
Well, changing that too, because so much of what the legislature does affects these agencies.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know how it affects the agencies until they're forced to do rulemaking authority or whatnot. So the driver's license division faced some challenges in that over the years their budget hadn't increased, but the responsibilities that the legislature put on them did.
Okay.
And it was incremental, but every time you do those increments, it actually adds up to a lot of, and one of the things that happened was they had to administer the driving tests themselves.
Okay.
Instead of allowing driving schools to do that.
That's right, like Sears.
That was
That's how I did mine.
I know. I did in high school. I remember taking the test with the person that had been training me.
Yeah.
And I did think at the time, like, well, he's kind of got a vested interest in me passing this. My parents will be mad if I don't. But that's 30 minutes for a full-time staffer. So you're taking somebody off the desk of processing those applications and putting them in a car, and sometimes with somebody who has to do this 3, 4, 5, 20 times. And each time that happens, and think about it, we have, I think, 18 million drivers in Texas that have just a regular driver's license. Yeah. Not even speaking to the commercial side.
Yeah.
So they had received some additional funding from the legislature. It hadn't kicked in yet because you can't just give somebody a check for $75 million and improve it overnight.
Yeah.
We had to build additional mega centers. We improved. We actually hired more people and upped their salaries.
Yeah.
You had people that were making $20,000 a year in charge of driver's licenses.
Okay.
And that adds a security problem as well.
Yeah.
So they up security. They put a lot of resources into a lot of things. But if you can do all that, if you don't tell the people that gave you that $75 million what you've done and the performance measures that have improved, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of that job.
So who's your audience there when you're
Goodness.
delivering the message? Like, it sounds like you have a lot of stakeholders in that type of situation.
Well, with the driver's license, it was the individuals that are seeking a driver's license. So I actually rewrote, one of my major jobs there was rewriting all the letters that went to people that had received a driver's license or their driver's license was up for renewal, because originally that had been written per statute, blah, 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 and then citing it. And the letters that went to them weren't very customer service or customer friendly.
Yeah.
They were hard to read. You didn't
Yeah.
even know what they were asking.
Yeah.
They used very technical language that, does this mean I need to renew? Like, what do you mean by this?
Yeah.
So rewriting all those letters was a chore
Okay.
because there were thousands of them
Yeah.
that were standardized letters that they sent out every single day, or could potentially send out every single day.
Yeah.
But rewriting that into much more plain speak and improving our communication to the end user, those folks that are bringing their 17-year-old,
Yeah.
explaining to them how their 17-year-old can get a license,
Yeah.
rewriting the website, that was a big chore. But also then communicating all these changes to the folks that were very much in charge, and also their reputations as a legislator were on the line. So, that was a big responsibility. But it also just took a lot of grunt work, and a lot of people think that, oh, you work in PR, you do big events, it's a party every night. It is not Emily in Paris. No part of this is Emily in Paris.
You're not doing galas every night?
I'm not doing galas every night. I mean, I wish, but no, it is sometimes more the tedious things that really have the biggest effect.
Yeah, because that's a big change, right? From a government agency, which we think of as kind of old-fashioned, hard to change, but that's a big change to be much more customer-friendly and treat it in that kind of respect, right?
It absolutely is.
Right? I mean, that's revolutionary almost.
Well, but I mean, if you think about it, DPS is over the driver's license division. It's a lot of troopers.
Yeah.
It's a lot of law enforcement,
Yeah.
a lot of serious business.
Right.
They have things that are very important that they need to be doing over just doing driver's licenses.
Yeah.
But the driver's license offices and that's the front-facing main thing that people interact with. Most people don't interact with troopers that often.
Right.
I mean, there are a handful of people that interact a lot. I think you're familiar with that with your background. But there are the vast majority of the 28, 32, whatever we're up to in the state of Texas, million people in this state. If all of them have to have an ID or a driver's license, that is your most front-facing organizational PR element.
Yeah.
And so to go in there and have a bad experience, it's hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's their fault. They didn't check the website. We had so many people show up with no documents and expect to get a driver's license. So sometimes, yes, there is an element of, well, that was your fault.
Yeah.
But if your website does not tell people exactly what they need in order to successfully interact with your agency, that is your fault.
Yeah. And I guess in working in public service, because your career in public service, you have those stakeholders that are obviously the people getting a driver's license, the people you work for, but then also, if I'm citizen A and I have a bad experience at DPS or any state agency, I call my state rep or state senator, and they kind of want to know, who's this PR person, who's this comms person, right? Or what are we doing here, right? Like, so you have another layer of bosses, right? I mean, since you're working in public service, is that make it even more complicated?
It does. So you also, working in disaster recovery, we also have the element of emotion.
Yeah.
So folks that have just been through one of the most traumatic experiences of their lives are then going to your agency saying, why can't you help me?
Yeah.
And then to explain to them, well, we need to look at your eligibility, and we need to have these documents and be able to prove this, that, unmet need.
Yeah.
And all of these complex terms that they're like, unmet need? My house is in ruins.
Yeah.
Why don't you just send out a builder right now?
Right.
And that's not how federal funding or really state funding works. And there are reasons behind that. But effectively communicating that is even more difficult because you have that element of emotion.
Yeah.
People get very emotional about their driver's license when they can't get it, but nowhere near the emotion nor the potential for negative news media, negative reaction from legislators. I mean, a legislator will get mad at DPS if their constituent complains about them.
Yeah.
But if you have people that are living in tents 2 weeks after a hurricane that are telling every reporter that has flown down there from every part of the world that this is awful and it's all so-and-so's fault, that's a whole different level of communication and crisis communications.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get into this. And so for folks that are watching, if you're in an elevator with a stranger and they ask you, "What do you do, Brittany?" How do you explain what your job is right now?
Sure. My job is to brag about some of the most confident and passionate people who serve the people of Texas. The people that I work with at the Texas General Land Office, they do not do this job because it is glamorous. They are not Emily in Paris. They are not going to fashion shows. They are working every single day on very complex paperwork that has to get done in order to serve you.
Yeah.
And our current commissioner, Commissioner Buckingham, likes to say we are here to serve the people we're supposed to serve and do it well.
Yeah.
And the complex part of that is that in order to do that, we have to follow all the bureaucracy of DC.
Yeah.
And that's not easy. And she understands that. Many of the elected officials understand that this is not easy and it's not fast.
Yeah.
But when they have a constituent on television that's crying, then they show a little less understanding.
Yeah. Because it's rough, right? I mean, it's a tough situation because you're helping people recover from natural disasters, and one of the main ones you've worked on for a while is Hurricane Harvey. And you were the first one to understand how big of a deal that was, right? The recovery and be on the messaging on that part.
Well, this was not my first rodeo, as they say.
Yeah.
I had worked Katrina and Rita when I was in K. Billy Hutchison's office.
Had you really?
Yes.
Wow.
And I have some stories from that, but those are for another time. I had
and maybe
seen,
not for comms and coffee, but maybe more comms and whiskey, right?
more accurate. I also had volunteered at some of the national political conventions, and both of my conventions, one was Tampa and the other one was St. Paul, were interrupted by hurricanes.
You're kidding.
No.
Okay.
So hurricanes have plagued me my whole life. But when that hit, it was a massive storm.
Yeah.
And it hit the Rockport area, devastated so many communities in that coastal Bend area, but then it went back into the Gulf of America and gathered steam and then drove up towards Houston.
Yeah.
And it gathered more water than it gathered force, right? So it dropped something like 60 inches of rain on various different communities that had already had rain previously. There was so much flooding, and much like what happened in Katrina, some of the flooding that happened afterwards was due to the water retention and needing to get rid of some of that water. I don't want to go into too much of the detail of that, but there were compounding factors that made it even worse.
Yeah.
This didn't happen over one day. Yeah. This wasn't it hit and it's gone. It went on for days. So watching the devastation continue, we had communications issues with the cell towers going out. This was the rise of the Cajun Navy. They were using an app to be able to communicate with people because 911 was so inundated with emergency calls. And some of those emergency calls weren't really emergencies. Yeah. And so they were able to use this app to be able to find and locate people and save a lot of lives that might have been lost if they hadn't been creative. Yeah. So the communications there was very different because we did the long-term disaster recovery. But as you remember, FEMA was operating on several different fronts at that time. They were spread very thin. And the governor and the administrator of FEMA decided to task the General Land Office with helping with the short-term housing mission. Yeah. And that was the first time a state agency had ever engaged at that level. And it's the short-term housing mission, meaning put these people in FEMA trailers, put these people in emergency housing ASAP. But it was further complicated by the fact that we didn't do the eligibility. So FEMA had to tell us who was eligible and what they were eligible for, and then we deliver that resource. Yeah. So it was at times months before some of those applications started rolling in, and people were complaining, and it was very emotional.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge.
Yeah. And at that point, I mean, that's crisis communications.
It was crisis 101.
Yeah. And you're having to explain to them why, right? Like the why, the what, the how.
And we weren't operating on one area either.
Yeah.
I had the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers asking me if I was going to move to Corpus Christi and work out of their emergency headquarters there. But so much of what we were doing was based out of Houston, in Southeast Texas. They had been inundated as well, and they were still underwater. They were literally still underwater. So we had boats that had been taken inland off of the Corpus Christi area. In Rockport, so many parts of Rockport were destroyed. You had just so many different areas, so many different legislators screaming your name.
Yeah.
And you were trying to help, but we actually hadn't received any funding directly. And that's part of the challenge with government communications, is helping people to understand what your limitations are, and that you're not making excuses. You just simply, we have to wait for Congress to give us a special appropriation of funding. And then we have to write an action plan saying how we're going to use that funding. They have to approve it. I mean, all of this takes months.
Yeah.
So the reason why we're not showing up at your door with a handyman and a team of builders is because we haven't gotten to the point where they'll authorize us to do that yet.
Yeah. And you have to be, when they say don't kill the messenger, good luck, right?
There was an organization called the Flak Club that I started for a little bit before Hurricane Harvey. And it's literally, we called ourselves in DC the Flaks, because you wore the flak jacket, because you were the one that they shot at. Now, not literally, the people that really serve our country, those are the real heroes. But sometimes it does feel, and it can be painful.
Yeah.
This is not a job for the faint-hearted. Let me just warn you about that. When you have reporters calling you, and I remember I was on Machu Picchu. I'd taken my very first vacation. No, the first vacation was the one when the hurricane hit North Carolina. I actually went to Emerald Isle for my first vacation. It was a family reunion, and had to help my family evacuate from the town.
It does chase you.
Yeah. It does chase me. But when I was in Machu Picchu, that was a fun trip. I actually Googled least disaster-prone places to visit, and I went to Machu Picchu, which is incredible. I highly recommend it. But that was when I think it was Tropical Storm Laura hit Texas. And I did not realize I wasn't getting email, because they have Wi-Fi everywhere in that country, but it's not secure.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get my email. So I had to change my message to get on WhatsApp and text me at this number, and I can access you and talk to you about what's going on. But I had the New York Times, the Washington Post, everybody calling, saying, what are you going to do about funding?
Yeah.
And I had to explain to all of them. And a lot of times, that's one of the notes that I took about this, about reputation management, is you have to be an expert in your field. If you don't know this stuff and you can't just rattle it off the top of your head, it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
And if you can only speak to them through prepared, statements that are, you have to be able to talk on background. You have to be able to talk off the record sometimes. But, and then also some of the worst cases of reputation management that I've had to deal with are times when I was trying to explain to a reporter how things work, and I said, this is on background, and they quoted me. Because I remember a state senator being very annoyed because we had individuals that were coming to us saying, I want the house built back the way it was. And that's not how HUD funding works.
Yeah.
They look at who's living in the house, and this is a program of last resort for providing safe, sanitary housing that meets the needs of the people there, right?
Yeah.
So if you are a 80-year-old grandma whose family has left the house and it's just you're not going to get that 4 or 5 bedroom house built back.
Yeah. And that's not Brittany Eck making that decision.
That is not me making that decision.
Yeah, that's coming from DC, right?
And, you might have other people that, have 6 people living in a 2-bedroom house.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they have a 5-bedroom house.
Yeah.
And explaining that to reporters and community leaders is very difficult. But I had the guy said, well, the accusation is that you're building bigger houses for rich people.
Yeah.
And I said, no, they're not the ones operating in this program. If there are, people that have, mansions are not asking for government assistance. They typically have the insurance necessary to rebuild. There's also a factor in here that goes to urgent need, and the level, we have to deal a lot with what the income level is of the individuals. That's part of the slowdown, is we have to get all of this financial documentation for all these people, and you have to be able to demonstrate this. You have to print it out and put it in a file and have it for 5 years later when we audit you on this, right?
Yeah.
But I had told the reporter that this is not where we're building. And he made it sound like I was saying we weren't supposed to be giving people, poor people big houses. And that's not what I was talking about at that time.
Yeah.
He not only misquoted me, he took it out of context and put it into a context that made me look very bad.
Yeah.
And I actually had a state senator write in and say some really negative things about me personally.
Wow.
And that was very frustrating, because here I am trying to talk to this reporter who...
And be transparent. Yeah.
And explain how this program works. That individual reporter has consistently, I think, we have these lists, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Good reporters that are great to work with because they really are looking for the facts.
Yeah.
And then bad reporters tend to be the ones that are just careless and make mistakes. And then the ugly ones are the ones that are really just trying to make their Pulitzer off your back.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful of those reporters.
Yeah.
I can give you examples. You remember some of these examples. But you have to balance that caution with being able to speak freely with them. I also encourage everyone to record every word they say on the record.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't matter. We went to that reporter's editor, and they wouldn't change the story.
Okay, so that was the next step, is to speak with the editor and try to get the statement changed.
Yes, I remember we wrote to that person, like, that was on background.
Yeah.
How dare you, sir? And I got no response.
Yeah.
And this publication we had routine problems with over the years. But one of the ways that I handled overcoming that was I had better relationships with other reporters.
Yeah.
And we took this reporter off our list, and put other of that publication on our, kept them on. But we were very cautious. From then on, I wouldn't speak to him on the phone.
Yeah.
I would only speak over email and write it down.
So there's ways to mitigate.
Yes, it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's disheartening
Yeah.
when you have a bad actor.
Yeah.
But then also, I'll give props to Ted Oberg, who's now in DC.
Yeah.
He really did a great job of really understanding these programs, and he is a true investigative reporter.
Yeah.
He would go and try and find differing opinions, the differing challenges. He would then present that to me. Like, we had, I've had other reporters bury the lead. Like, we're doing a story about this, we want a statement on that, and then combine the stories and not give you an opportunity to weigh on the other part. And I've called those out too.
Yeah.
But it's, when you have a good one, really feed that relationship, and make sure that they understand that you're willing to talk to them because of that relationship. That's it's reporters. I think 90% of reporters want to do a good job.
Yeah.
And then there's some that are manipulative, and some that are problematic. But the vast majority of them, I get it. I know that a lot of people don't like the media, but you can find the good ones out there. And then feeding that relationship. And whenever we had good news to tout, we would go to certain people before others. And then that reporter had to find out through somebody else's reporting that this thing was happening.
Yeah.
And that's really the only mechanism you have through media relations to be able to reward. And it's not rewarding, like, this is not a paid publicist.
Right.
Ted would tell something negative about us as well, as long as, but I couldn't, as long as it was the truth. Yes, that's a fair assessment. We have to do it that way, but reward that when they're fair to you, and when they really do try and help the public understand what you can and can't do.
And so with the media, it sounds like it's a lot of relationships. Like you need to be available to them, and they need to be available to you, and you need to be transparent. And it still sounds like your reputation is still a big part about how you interact with the media.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You cannot lie.
Yeah.
If you get caught in a lie to a reporter, A, they will never trust you again, and B, they will tell all their friends. So there have been times when I've accidentally lied or, told not the truth, and I've had to pick up the phone and be like, hey, I just found out something's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I thought this was the truth. It's not the truth. This is the actual situation. And usually it's not big. It might be like a difference in numbers or something. But it's never malicious, and that helps me maintain that relationship with them. And I had that happen one time, and then they didn't answer the phone, so I texted them, and he was about to go on air, and he's like, "Oh, thank God you texted me. I can't answer the phone right now." So just making sure you have it in writing that you tried to repair that issue is really helpful.
And they're human, just like everybody else, and they understand mistakes get made, and especially with such a complicated issue like disaster recovery and hurricanes and weather patterns and federal programs giving money back. And,
who said what? Who did? And also dealing with so many different. We assist so many different people that sometimes I'll get one story confused with another.
Yeah.
Being able to go back and say, hey, that was this. Let me clarify or whatever. They appreciate that.
And it sounds like you have to do a real deep dive into not just the programs, but the legal, and talking with lawyers to find out what you can say, what you can't say, all that good stuff, right? I mean, like it's not just going out there and saying pretty words.
Well, so I remember at the beginning of the Harvey mission, when we were doing some of the FEMA stuff, there was a discussion about whether or not we could respond to criticisms because the people had an expectation of privacy. And this was a lawyer versus Brittany moment.
Yeah.
Where I said, we have to respond to this. We have, first of all, we have an elected official that runs this agency. So that person shouldn't be blamed because somebody's going out and saying misinformation.
Yeah.
And if you don't start clarifying some of this stuff immediately, and I said, look, they have an expectation of privacy until they went to the press. And they opened their mouth and they said, I am an applicant. I applied for this program. I'm not revealing anything about their application to this program. What I am doing is clarifying that what they are saying about us in this program is incorrect.
Yeah.
And to that nature, one of the best things that you can do to be prepared and be able to handle crisis communication is train your staff to be responsive.
Yeah.
I have an individual who's a program manager over some of our Harvey things, and he was giving a speech to new hires. And he was up there saying, there's only one person at this agency. If she calls, you have to take her call. And that at that exact moment, I called him while he was on stage addressing new hires. And he goes, actually, this is her. Hang on a second. And he took the call, and I said, hey, I need to know this. And he's like, okay, I'm giving a speech to new hires. Can it wait? And I said, yes, it can wait 1 hour.
Yeah.
And then I followed up with him in an hour. But, he, as well as many of my team, know that if I'm on deadline, I need you to be responsive. And this is not a thing where we can wait a couple of days. You have to, and even if the message is, we won't be able to have that information for this reason, give me something that I can give them.
Yeah.
You don't, I always like to say to all elected officials and everyone, you don't have to answer the question they asked.
Yeah.
You can answer the question you hoped they asked.
Yeah.
Or the answer might be that information is unknown, but we do know X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And that enables them to better understand the issues, and it gives them content because they've been tasked by their boss to write a story on this topic.
Yeah.
If you say no comment or you don't provide them with alternative content, they'll only run. This was the situation with Mayor Sylvester Turner. He was out there saying everything. He would open his mouth, and so many of the things that he would say were inaccurate. But if you're not opposing it, if you don't know that that's being said about you, if they don't give you the opportunity to respond, if you don't respond when given the opportunity. And once again, you don't have to answer there were times when I just said, that is not the way this works.
Yeah.
This is the way this works. And I'm not saying that he was intentionally misleading the public. That's a matter for whiskey and conversation. But at times, it was just simply things that he had heard or somebody had heard, and it was being reiterated.
Yeah.
And you have to fix that immediately.
Especially in a dynamic situation like recovery, right? Like you have, and it sounds like that's what's kind of your North Star is transparency with the public, since they are the taxpayer and everything else. And they're honestly, in like you said, in a very tough situation, but in a chaotic, dynamic situation, people look to you to give them clarity.
Well,
right?
and you have a responsibility not only to the taxpayers and the people who have been injured by whatever disaster it is, but to the elected officials that obligated that money to that purpose. You need to be providing them with constant talking points of this program is working.
Yeah.
This is how it works. This is where they are right now. This is what they need from us. I also like to engage elected officials whenever we're like, let's say we're doing the action plan public comment period. Mm-hmm. Being able to tell them, we actually set up at the beginning after Hurricane Harvey, it was a daily conference call. But after that, it became like a weekly conference call. It eventually became a newsletter. And then the newsletter eventually replaced the conference call, and we weren't doing the conference call anymore. But if we had something that we could have them help us with, they want to be able to help these individuals that are hurt in their community. Yeah. And so being able to provide that information, like, hey, these are the resources that are currently available. This is where people can donate. This is where people that need donations can go. This is the service that can, even if it's not us. Yeah. We can provide them, after the July 4th floods this year, we were providing just messaging out there that this is where FEMA was, this is where the disaster recovery centers are. These are the resources that are available to you. Being able to amplify the messages of other state agencies. That was actually a mandate that came out by the Texas legislature following Hurricane Harvey, was that they wanted all the different organizations that are doing great work to communicate with each other and talk about what priorities. So the Texas Division of Emergency Management took the lead on this and had a conference call where they could say, here's the forestry folks. They really need us amplifying this message out there. Yeah. Can y'all put this out to your followers as well?
So we're working as a team.
With
across different agencies.
And making sure that this is the priority message of today. Yeah. You might have individual messages, but we really would like for you also to amplify this one. Yeah. So getting out our messaging while also helping others.
Yeah. And in this era of AI, bots, misinformation, has that made your job harder getting the message out during these situations?
Absolutely. I will say the thing that makes me the most nervous is the potential for AI to fake videos or fake people saying things that they're not saying. Yeah. That's the truly scary thing for me. They're getting better and better at it. But as far as the bots go, I think the hardest thing is convincing the elected officials that some of the voices that are coming at them are not, that's a echo chamber of a certain priority that somebody that doesn't have our best interest in mind. Yeah. So that they're not overreacting to the negative feedback that's coming back at them on social media, identifying, okay, these are the real voices and these are the real people you need to worry about. Yeah. Because, there's so much negativity out there. And the negativity, the reason for that may not be what you think. Yeah. It may be somebody that's making money somehow. Yeah. And so you need to be able to stay focused on what your messaging is, and be able to work with those other subject matter experts in the field to amplify that.
Okay. So why did you do public service? I mean, it seems like there's a lot more stakeholders, a lot more cooks in your kitchen telling you how to do your job. Why public service for you? What drove you to it? As opposed to be working in the private sector and driving a Lamborghini.
I think I'm a glutton for punishment. No, it's really rewarding. I will say I have done hundreds of key handoffs where I have physically gone out to the communities and seen some of the people in the most dire need that would not have been able to recover from the situation that they're in. And that's why it was so hard during COVID when we had to, 6 feet away and be like, here's your keys and here's my mask. Yeah. I've personally hugged hundreds of people that cried. Yeah. And to be able to serve Texans in a way that, the Congress gave us these funds. Now, whether you agree with how different funding should be used or not, these are some of the people that are the most in need and the least likely to recover on their own. And to be able to tell them that they are now going to have a safe place to live, and we have to build 2 feet above base flood elevation, which means that if the water comes up to here, we have to build up here. And we had people that we rebuilt before Imelda and Laura call us and say, everyone in the neighborhood came to my house and stayed the night with me because my house wasn't going to flood. Yeah. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, that's tangible.
And you don't get that in your Lamborghini.
Now, what you did get, though, even though you are just a bureaucrat, right? Is that the word? But no, I guess it seems like because you work in the public sector, you get more battle tested, for lack of better words, because you're constantly doing things, and then you also were recognized for some of the efforts that you did. Because can you kind of explain why we have this Emmy here on this episode with us today?
Sure.
Kind of walk us through how you got this, and then explain to us how you almost drowned.
So we did a public service announcement, a TV ad. They really wanted to push the message that folks need to be prepared, right? Yeah. And one of the things that you can do to be prepared in the state of Texas, the best thing you can do for yourself, and I know it costs a lot of money, but if you live in flood-prone areas, having flood insurance is so vital. Yeah. And we were trying to come up with a way to identify how to make that message resonate. And we wanted the message of don't ignore the risk. You live in an area that your home is in a floodplain, a flood-prone area. Know what your risks are in your area and buy the appropriate insurance, because you're not just risking, your life. You might not have a livelihood to return to. If you evacuate, are you going to be able to rebuild with the resources that you have? So we came up with this idea of a woman playing the piano. Yeah. And she's so into the music that she's playing while the waters rise around her. And we have her family photos floating, and all the different things that could be affected and be impacted by flooding. And she just keeps playing the piano until it's up at her neck. And we did that message in English and Spanish, which was a challenge too, because you have to be able to have a script that works within 30 seconds or a 15-second radio ad. So the scripting on that was very difficult. It's a challenge to do any kind of public service announcement, but it really did make a big difference. It got picked up by TV stations that thought it was a really cool ad. It got a lot of coverage on social media, and they put it up for an Emmy Award, and we won. And I never thought that would be in my repertoire, but I am one part towards my EGOT, I guess.
There you go. Almost there.
Almost there. So close.
You got to write a screenplay now.
But it was a team effort, and our the vendors that worked with us on this were such great professionals, and they helped us. They found a big tank. It's like basically a big pool that you could build out an apartment in it, and with this water that you could just pour out very quickly, so you could get that effect of the rising water. Yeah. But during that, we also videoed like the water coming up above an electrical outfit, because once water gets above your electricity, once your electricity gets affected, that's what costs so much. Because
Okay.
if it's below, if you only get 5 inches of water in your house, you can cut that out. You can bring in the big fans, and most likely you're not going to have as much damage. But once it destroys that electrical system, oof,
Yeah.
it's so much more expensive. So we also got that video footage at the same time. So there was a lot of direction going on. There were a lot of us that were in this water in this very humid environment for hours. And our talent, the young lady that was playing the piano, she bore with us for so long, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was literally one of the most fun things I've ever done in government. To spend 2 days in a tub of water, waist deep, trying to figure out what all we needed to film.
Yeah.
But it was amazing, and it resulted in this amazing award.
That's incredible. That's really incredible to do that. And
I think us and TxDOT may be the only agencies. Y'all other agencies, let me know if you've won too. But I know that TxDOT has won for their "Don't Mess with Texas" campaign.
did they?
before,
Okay,
too.
I was gonna say I was worried about that, but that's pretty elite company.
Yes.
Because Don't Mess with Texas is pretty iconic.
Yes, and they have a big budget for that, and they have Willie Nelson and King George Strait have done all these amazing people have done their TV spots. We had a much smaller budget and had to make not as big of an impact, but close to it.
Yeah.
So I think it turned out really well.
That's amazing, and it's well deserved considering all the people you helped, and just the what you show what people in government do. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what's so impressive. That it's such
and to
a
be able
big
to work
effort.
with the legislature too, and all the folks that have taken bold steps to make sure that people are aware of their risk.
Yeah.
You can't just do that with one TV ad.
Yeah.
And so communications, especially with disaster recovery, public service communications, you have to use every asset that you have available to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's getting creative.
Yeah. Brittany Eck, what is next for you?
Oh, great question. I don't know.
Next hurricane, next natural disaster.
I love my team so much.
Yeah.
I work with Heather LeGrone and Jet Hayes and all these amazing experts in their field that have dedicated so many years towards making sure people are safe and secure, that they're able to recover fully. They make my job easy because they make me proud to do it.
Yeah.
And so being able, you asked what's the elevator pitch. It's also that, I get to defend these people.
Yeah.
And when you're a reporter that's attacking our program or saying that we did something wrong, now, if we did do something wrong, and sometimes that happens, we're dealing with billions of dollars of disaster recovery grant funding, and mistakes will happen occasionally, but for the most part, I work for some of the most dedicated people who are out there every day trying to help others. They're trying to help these individual communities navigate through the complex environmental paperwork, and you have to make sure everything is perfect, because in 6 years, when the auditors come, the federal auditors come with a red pen and they're asking you to defend every single dollar you spent. If you can't, then pay it back.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with a community that has a annual budget of $25 million and they got a $3 million grant from you, you need to make sure that they do everything right, because in 6 years, they won't be able to pay that bill.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's tedious. Sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to. But the people that do that work every day, they don't do it for the Lamborghinis.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
If you're doing it right, you don't end up with a Lamborghini in state service.
Yeah.
But and I remember you asked, what's the difference, or what's what the word bureaucrat.
Yeah.
And I said there's two different types of people. There are bureaucrats and there are public servants.
Yeah.
And the people that are working hard every day and really do try to do everything right, and don't take advantage of the system, and don't, squat on a job just relying on the fact that they think nobody's going to fire them because they work for government. The people that are out there every single day because they want to do that job, they're public servants. They're not bureaucrats.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Sounds like you're here to stay and keep helping Texans.
I can't think of what would drive me away from it.
Yeah.
Now I do think that there's other opportunities that I might pursue that would also enable me to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it is such a loss whenever we have people that have 25 years of experience, who also have the heart for helping others learn that.
Yeah.
You want to keep them in state government.
Yeah.
And the Texas General Land Office does a great job of that, because they have a great mission, and they have great people that work there. And they have a history of that.
Yeah.
So every day I wake up and I'm like, okay, what are we doing today? And the projects are endless. Every time I think like, oh, we're probably ramping down, it's like, oh, new one. We just opened up a new housing program, and we have new counties that weren't involved in Hurricane Harvey, so they've never had our program before. We have Hockley, Texas.
Okay.
Small county out there.
Okay.
We're rebuilding houses up there.
Wow.
Because they got hit with really bad tornadoes.
Okay.
But they've never had a hurricane recovery mission.
Yeah.
Because they are,
Yeah.
1,000 miles from the coast. But yeah, no, it's great to see every day a new challenge present itself.
Well, Brittany Eck, thank you for your
Thank
service
you.
to Texans, and thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.